It's a shame Kendall is barely scraping by on government assistance while Owen actually contributes to society. That's what my mother said, out loud, at Easter brunch. In front of 12 members of my extended family, 3 of whom I hadn't seen in over a year, she said it while cutting into a piece of sea bass that I had sourced from a local fisherman at 4:30 that morning. She said it while sitting in a dining room I had redesigned with my own hands. She said it in a restaurant called the Hearth and Harvest, my restaurant. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I set my fork down, folded my napkin into a neat square, and placed it beside my plate. Then I looked at my daughter, Lily, who was sitting across from me with her small fingers wrapped around a glass of sweet tea, and I watched her eyes go wide and fill with something no 8-year-old should ever have to feel at a family meal. I kept my voice steady. I'll tell you what I said in a moment. But first, you need to understand how we got here. If you've ever had a family member treat you like you didn't matter, hit that like button and subscribe. My husband, David Mercer, died in a construction accident 5 years ago. Lily was 3. She doesn't remember his voice, but she keeps a photograph of him on her nightstand, a framed 5x7 of him holding her at the hospital the day she was born. She talks to it sometimes before bed. I've heard her through the door, whispering things like, "Daddy, I got a gold star today." I never interrupt. I just stand in the hallway and breathe. When David died, there was a life insurance payout. It wasn't enormous, but it was enough. Enough to make a decision. I was 29 years old, a widow with a toddler, and I had 2 choices. I could grieve in a way my family would recognize, which meant shrinking, asking for help, moving back into my childhood bedroom while my mother reminded me daily that I never should have married a construction worker in the first place. Or I could do what I'd been doing my entire life. I could fix things quietly. I bought the building. It was a 2-story brick structure on a corner lot in Savannah's historic district. The previous owner had run a mediocre seafood place that went under during the pandemic. The building was distressed. The price was right. I used $190,000 of David's insurance money as a down payment, secured a small business loan for the renovation, and spent 11 months gutting the interior, sourcing local farms, and building a menu from scratch. The Hearth and Harvest opened 4 years ago. Last fiscal year, it grossed $1.64 million. My personal draw is $310,000 annually. My net worth, between the restaurant, the building, and a commercial property I picked up 2 years later, sits at $2.4 million. My mother thinks I'm a waitress. She has thought this for 3 years. Every time my parents come to eat at the Hearth and Harvest, which they do roughly once a month because my father likes the shrimp and grits, I'm wearing a plain white apron. I greet them at the host stand. I check on their table. I bring Lily out from the back office where she does her homework after school. And every single time, my mother pats my hand and says something like, "It's nice they let you bring the baby to work, honey." I never corrected her. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself this was simply what family did. They misunderstood you, and you let it go because the alternative was worse. You swallowed it. I swallowed a lot. 3 years ago, Owen got a DUI. He blew a 0.19 on a Tuesday night after a client dinner. His license was suspended. His insurance agency nearly folded because he couldn't drive to appointments. My mother called me at 11:15 at night, crying, asking if I could help your brother out, just this once, just until he gets back on his feet. I paid $18,000 for his legal defense and license reinstatement. I wired it through a third-party account so Owen would never know it came from me. My mother told the family that Owen's connections in the industry had taken care of it. 2 years ago, my parents' roof started leaking. Not a small leak. A structural failure that was spreading mold into the attic insulation. The HVAC system failed the same month. My father, Richard, is 62 and retired on a fixed income. They couldn't afford the repair. I created a fake grant application through a nonprofit shell I'd already established for tax purposes, submitted it on their behalf, and funded the entire project myself. $45,000 for a new roof, new HVAC, new ductwork, and attic remediation. My mother told her book club she'd won a Community Improvement Award. Owen's office lease in downtown Savannah costs $4,200 a month at market rate. He pays $1,700. The difference, $2,500 every single month is subsidized by Mercer Heritage Group, a holding company I own. Owen has no idea. He thinks he negotiated a great deal with the building management company. He didn't. I told the property manager to offer him the reduced rate and bill the difference to my account. That subsidy has been running for 2.5 years. $2,500 a month for 30 months. $75,000. On top of that, I've been funneling $1,200 a month to my parents through a program I invented called Senior Heritage. It shows up in their bank account as a direct deposit from what looks like a municipal assistance fund. It isn't. It's me. That's been running for 18 months. $21,600. The DUI. The roof. The lease. The stipend. The anniversary cruise I paid for 2 years ago that my mother still believes she won in a radio contest. $12,000 for 10 days in the Caribbean. $142,500. Over 6 years. To people who think I live off welfare, I told myself it was love. I told myself this was what a good daughter did. I brushed it off. I pushed it down. I kept writing the checks because the alternative was admitting something I wasn't ready to face. That my family didn't love the version of me that existed. They loved the version they'd invented. The struggling single mom, the waitress, the one who needed them more than they needed her. That version kept the hierarchy intact. Patricia at the top, Owen in the golden middle, and Kendall somewhere below, grateful for scraps. And I let it happen. For 7 years, I let it happen. Then came Easter, April 12th, 11:45 in the morning. The Hearth and Harvest was closed to the public for a private brunch. I had reserved the main dining room for family, 12 place settings, white linen, fresh peonies in low-glass vases, a menu I'd built by hand, herb-crusted lamb, whipped sweet potato, roasted asparagus, a citrus salad with fennel and blood orange. The sea bass was a special. Pan-seared brown butter capers, my father's favorite. Lily wore a lavender dress she'd picked out herself. She'd spent 20 minutes in front of the mirror that morning, turning side to side, asking me if she looked pretty. I told her she looked like spring. She smiled so wide I could see the gap where her front tooth used to be. My mother arrived in a cream blazer and pearls. She kissed my cheek and said, "Oh, this place cleans up nicely for holidays. I'm sure the owner doesn't mind you using it." I stayed quiet. I set out the bread baskets. Owen arrived late, as always, with his wife Tiffany and their 2 boys. He was wearing a sport coat that still had the price tag crease on the sleeve. He clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Smells great, sis. Maybe one day you'll get to run a place like this instead of just bussing the tables." I didn't respond. I just listened. Brunch went smoothly for the first 40 minutes. My aunt and uncle from Augusta complimented the lamb. My cousin's wife asked for the salad recipe. Lily sat between me and my father, carefully cutting her asparagus into small pieces the way I'd taught her. She was being so careful, so quiet, so good. Then my mother started. It began the way it always does. A sigh, a glance at Owen, a performative lean toward my aunt. "We have to be patient with Kendall," she said, loud enough for the entire table to hear. "When you're living off the state, you lose your sense of pride." The table went still. My aunt set her fork down. My uncle looked at his wife. Owen smirked and took a sip of his mimosa, and then Patricia said it. The line. The one that echoed off the exposed brick walls of the dining room I had designed, in the building I had purchased, in the restaurant I had built from nothing. "It's a shame Kendall is barely scraping by on government assistance, while Owen actually contributes to society." My father cleared his throat. He looked at his plate of sea bass. He said nothing. Owen laughed. Tiffany covered her mouth with her napkin, but I could see her shoulders shaking, and then Patricia turned to the children. Owen's 2 boys were at the end of the table with Lily, playing with a set of small wooden animals I'd put out as table favors. Lily was holding a painted horse, running her thumb along its mane. My mother reached across the table, picked up the gravy boat, and poured an entire side of rosemary gravy directly onto Lily's plate. It splashed across her lamb, her asparagus, pooled under her bread. Some of it splattered onto the sleeve of her lavender dress. "Poor kids shouldn't be picky," Patricia said, and then she giggled. Lily didn't move. She didn't look up. Her knuckles turned white around the fork she was still holding. I watched her grip tighten until the tendons in her small hand stood out against the skin. She stared at her ruined plate. Her bottom lip pressed flat. She didn't cry. Not yet. She was trying so hard not to cry. Richard Mercer, my father, 62 years old, sitting 3 feet from his granddaughter, looked at his watch. Something inside me snapped. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a clean, quiet break. Like a thread pulled too tight for too long that finally gives way without a sound. I felt it behind my ribs. A stillness that wasn't heavy anymore. It was sharp. It was clear. I was done pretending this was okay. I stood up slowly. I placed my hand on Lily's shoulder. She looked up at me, and I saw it. Not tears. Something worse. Resignation. An 8-year-old who had already learned to expect this. I reached down and wiped the gravy from her sleeve with my napkin. I smoothed the fabric twice. Then I kissed the top of her head and whispered, "Go to the back office, sweetheart. Put on the spare shirt in my desk drawer. I'll be there in 5 minutes." She slid off her chair without a word. She carried the painted horse with her. She didn't look at anyone. The table was still silent. 12 people, forks suspended, glasses mid-lift. My mother was still smiling, that small, satisfied curve she always wore after she'd landed something she considered clever. I stayed standing. And then Marcus Miller walked over. Marcus has been my general manager for 10 years. He was there the day I signed the deed. He was there the night we failed our first health inspection, and I stayed until 3 a.m. scrubbing grout with a toothbrush until we passed. He has watched me build this restaurant from a gutted shell into the highest-rated farm-to-table in coastal Georgia. He knows exactly who I am. He approached the table the way he approaches every guest interaction. Polished, professional, measured. "Ma'am," he said, looking directly at me, "the kitchen needs your signature on the organic produce invoice for Monday's delivery. Also, the Savannah Food and Wine Board called again about your keynote slot in September." My mother's smile faded by degrees. It didn't collapse. It melted, like wax sliding off a candlestick. She looked at Marcus. She looked at me. She looked at the apron I was still wearing. "What is he talking about?" she said. I didn't answer her. I turned to my father. Richard was gripping his butter knife with both hands, staring at the center of the table like it might open up and swallow him whole. "Dad," I said. My voice was even. My hands were still. "You've spent 3 years eating for free in a building I own. I think it's time you settled the tab." Nobody moved. "Marcus," I said without looking away from my father's face, "please bring the check for this table to my father. He needs to see what a meal at my restaurant actually costs." Marcus nodded once. He walked to the service station. He printed the bill. He brought it on a leather folio and set it beside my father's plate. Richard looked down at it. The color left his face in a slow, even drain, starting at his forehead and working its way down past his jaw. $2,847. 12 guests. Private dining room. Full bar. The sea bass alone was $62 a plate. "Kendall," my mother started. "I think you've said quite enough for one afternoon, Mother." I folded my apron over the back of my chair. "Enjoy the sea bass. It's the most expensive thing on my menu." I walked to the back office. I closed the door behind me. Lily was sitting in my desk chair, wearing my spare chambray shirt that hung past her knees. She was holding the painted horse in her lap. "Mom," she said. Her voice was small, cracked right down the middle. "We're going home, baby." "Are they going to be mad?" "Yes." "Because of what you said?" "Because of what I stopped pretending." She nodded like she understood. And maybe she did. I drove us home in my 2018 Volvo. The restaurant faded in the rearview mirror. I didn't look back. The house was dark when we got home. I made Lily a grilled cheese and tomato soup. I braided her hair. I read her 2 chapters of her book. She fell asleep at 7:30 with the painted horse tucked under her arm. Then I sat at the kitchen island alone. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the wall clock. The street light cut through the blinds in thin white bars across the countertop. My phone was on the granite in front of me. It had been buzzing since we left the restaurant. 17 missed calls. 9 from my mother. 5 from Owen, 3 from numbers I didn't recognize, which meant Patricia had already started recruiting. I didn't open a single message. I sat there until 3:14 in the morning. I know the exact time because I was staring at the microwave clock when it happened. When the last piece of something I'd been holding together for 7 years quietly let go. I wasn't angry. That was the strange part. The anger had burned through hours ago, somewhere between the grilled cheese and the second chapter. What was left wasn't rage. It was arithmetic. $18,000 for Owen's DUI, $45,000 for the roof and HVAC, $75,000 for 30 months of lease subsidies at $2,500 each, $21,600 for 18 months of the senior heritage payments, $12,000 for the anniversary cruise, smaller amounts scattered across 6 years for car repairs, medical copays, grocery runs, birthday gifts I was never thanked for. $142,500 to people who told 12 relatives I was on welfare, to a mother who poured gravy on my daughter's plate and laughed, to a father who looked at his watch while it happened, to a brother who thinks he negotiated a good lease. My silence wasn't keeping the peace. It was funding my daughter's humiliation. Every check I wrote, every subsidy I maintained, every fake grant and invented program was a brick in the wall they used to look down on us. I had built their pedestal with my own money and then stood beneath it wondering why they couldn't see me. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It was sharp. It was clear. I picked up my phone. Not to answer the 43 notifications stacked on my screen. I opened my email. I typed one message. I addressed it to Sarah Brooks. The subject line was, Mercer Heritage Group, immediate action required. The body was 3 sentences. Sarah, effective immediately, terminate the subsidized lease agreement for the Owen Mercer office space at 412 Broughton Street. Issue a 30-day no-cause termination notice per Section 14B of the lease. Cancel all recurring transfers from the Senior Heritage Disbursement account. I want every payment stopped by end of business today. I read it twice. I pressed send. The soft, unmistakable click of confirmation echoed in the dead silence of the kitchen. The screen went dark. I set the phone face down on the counter. I felt nothing. Not anger. Not pity. Nothing. Just clarity. Like stepping out of a room where the air had been too thick to breathe for so long I'd forgotten what clean oxygen tasted like. Sarah responded at 7:42 the next morning, Monday, April 13th. Done. 30-day notice served electronically to Owen Mercer's registered address at 8:15 a.m. The subsidized rate of $1,700 is void. Market rate of $4,200 per month applies effective May 13th. All senior heritage recurring transfers have been frozen as of 7:30 a.m. The disbursement account will be closed by Wednesday. I'll have the full documentation on your desk by noon. Call me if you need anything else. 1 email, 3 sentences, and $30,000 in annual lease subsidies gone. $14,400 in annual stipend payments gone. The invisible architecture I had spent 6 years building under my family's feet dissolved in 9 hours. By 10 a.m., I had Marcus pull the family comp list from the restaurant's reservation system. Every Mercer was removed. No more free meals. No more, just put it on Kendall's tab. The host stand would treat them like any other walk-in. At 11:17 a.m., my phone lit up. Owen. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. He called again at 11:19, and 11:23, and 11:31. 4 calls in 14 minutes. I watched the screen light up each time from across the kitchen, where I was prepping a honey thyme glaze for the Tuesday dinner service. At 12:45, my mother called. I declined without hesitation. At 2:30, a text from Owen. What the hell is going on with my lease? Call me back now. I turned off the ringer. At 6 p.m., the doorbell rang. I was helping Lily with her math homework at the kitchen table. Fractions. She was getting good at them. She looked up at me when the bell rang, and I saw it in her eyes. She already knew. Stay here, baby. Keep working on number 7. I walked to the front door. I opened it 6 inches. I kept my hand on the frame. Owen was standing on my porch. His sport coat was gone. His shirt was untucked, half pulled from his belt on one side. His eyes were red-rimmed, and there was a sheen of sweat across his forehead, despite the evening breeze. Tiffany's white SUV was idling in my driveway with the windows up. "You need to fix this," he said. His voice was shaking. "I got a notice this morning saying my lease is being terminated." "Terminated, Kendall? Some holding company I've never heard of is pulling my rate. They want $4,200 a month. I can't pay $4,200 a month. My agency clears maybe $3,800 after expenses on a good month. Do you understand what this means?" I stayed quiet, letting him continue. "And Mom and Dad. They called me in a panic. Some program they were getting payments from just stopped. No warning, no explanation. $1,200 a month, just gone. Dad's on a fixed income, Kendall. Mom is 68. What are they supposed to do?" "She's 58, I said. "What?" "Mom is 58, not 68. His mouth opened, closed. He ran his hand through his hair and gripped the back of his neck. "That's what you're focused on right now? My business is going to fold. I can't afford that rent. I can't relocate in 30 days. My clients are tied to that address. You have to know someone, call someone, do something." I looked at him. I thought about the $18,000 I'd spent on his DUI lawyer, the $75,000 in lease subsidies he never knew existed, the $142,500 total. The gravy on my daughter's plate. "Where's your apology to Lily?" I said. He blinked. "What?" "My daughter. Yesterday. Your mother poured gravy on her plate and called her a charity case. You laughed. Tiffany laughed. Dad looked at his watch. "So I'll ask you once. Where is your apology to my 8-year-old daughter?" His jaw worked. No sound came out. "I didn't stop being your sister because of the money, Owen." My voice was steady, even. "I stopped because I realized my silence was the only thing keeping you relevant." I stepped back. The door closed softly. No slam. Just the quiet click of the lock sliding into place. I stood in the hallway for a moment. Through the door, I could hear Owen's shoes on the porch steps, then the SUV door, then the engine pulling out of the driveway, then nothing. I walked back to the kitchen. Lily was still sitting at the table, pencil in hand, staring at number 7. "Who was that?" she asked. "Nobody important," I said. I sat down beside her. I picked up the pencil she'd set aside for me. I pointed at the fraction. 3/8, she said quietly. "That's exactly right." I went through my phone that night after Lily fell asleep, not to read the messages, to end them. I blocked Owen's number first, then my mother's, then my father's, though he had never actually called. Then Tiffany's. Then 3 numbers I didn't recognize that had started texting that afternoon, cousins or friends Patricia had recruited to apply pressure. I removed every Mercer except Lily from my emergency contact list. I deleted myself from the family group chat. I removed my mother from the shared photo album I'd kept of Lily's school events. I didn't do it in anger. I did it in clarity. Then I closed the phone, plugged it into the charger on the kitchen counter, and went to bed. I slept through the night for the first time in months. No alarm. No dread sitting on my chest when the room got light. Just stillness. The next 3 weeks passed quietly. Sarah Brooks sent over the documentation confirming that all financial ties between Mercer Heritage Group and Owen's lease had been severed. The 30-day notice was clean, legal, airtight. The senior heritage disbursement account was closed by that Wednesday, exactly as she'd promised. The final transfer summary showed $21,600 dispersed over 18 months to a couple who spent 3 years telling anyone who would listen that their daughter was on food stamps. Marcus handled the restaurant without a ripple. The Hearth and Harvest ran its Tuesday through Saturday dinner service, its weekend brunch, its private event bookings. The Savannah Food and Wine Board confirmed my keynote for September. A regional magazine reached out about a feature profile. Life continued. It didn't just continue. It breathed. I didn't seek updates on my family. I didn't have to. Savannah is a city that talks. And food people talk louder than most. The first thing I heard, 3 weeks after Easter, came through Marcus. Owen had gone to the building management office on Broughton Street and demanded to speak with someone about the lease termination. The property manager, who had been billing Owen's subsidy to my account for 2.5 years, simply handed him the standard no-cause termination paperwork and told him the ownership group had exercised its contractual right. Owen asked who the ownership group was. The property manager said he wasn't authorized to disclose that information. Owen couldn't find $4,200 a month. His agency cleared $3,800 on a good month after overhead. The math didn't work. It had never worked. He'd been operating on a deficit from the day he signed the lease. The only reason it had ever been sustainable was because I was covering $2,500 of his rent every 30 days without his knowledge. By the end of May, Owen moved his agency out of the Broughton Street office. He relocated to a shared co-working space near the highway, the kind with fluorescent lighting and a communal printer. His new office was a glass-walled room the size of a walk-in closet. The address change alone cost him 3 clients who had specifically chosen him because his downtown location felt established. Professional. The monthly subsidy I'd been running for my parents stopped hitting their account on April 30th. $1,200 a month. Gone. My mother called the number listed on the senior heritage paperwork. It was a disconnected line tied to a defunct LLC. She called the city. The city had no record of any program by that name. She called 2 nonprofits listed in the Savannah Community Resource Directory. Neither had heard of it. I imagine that was the moment she started to wonder. Or maybe she already knew and had simply never allowed herself to examine it too closely, because examining it would mean admitting where the money came from, which would mean admitting what I was, which would mean admitting what she'd done. By June, the slow rot had started. Owen's agency lost its 6th client in 8 weeks. The story of what happened at Easter brunch had begun circulating through Savannah's social channels the way all Savannah stories circulate, quietly, through luncheons and golf foursomes and book club side conversations. The version that traveled wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. The facts were enough. Patricia Mercer told 12 relatives her daughter was on welfare. Her daughter owned the restaurant they were sitting in. That restaurant grosses $1.64 million a year. People did the math. People always do the math. Owen's insurance clients were business owners, professionals, the kind of people who ate at the hearth and harvest on date nights and recognized the name on the menu. 2 of them mentioned to Marcus, casually, over appetizers, that they'd heard the story. One of them said, "I'm not comfortable being represented by someone whose family operates like that." He moved his commercial policy to a firm in Pooler by the end of the month. The Moss and Oak Country Club held its annual summer gala in July. My parents had attended every year for the last 9 years. They had bought a table. They had invited friends. It was Patricia's favorite event of the calendar, the one she planned outfits for starting in March. The invitation didn't come. My father called the club's membership coordinator. The coordinator said the gala committee had made some adjustments to the guest list, and they appreciated the Mercers' past support. Richard cleared his throat. He asked if there had been a mistake. The coordinator said there was no mistake. They wished the Mercers a pleasant summer. Patricia was removed from the gala list to avoid, as the board chair reportedly told another member, unnecessary drama. 3 other couples they regularly dined with stopped returning their calls. The circle that had sustained Patricia's social identity, the lunches, the charity auctions, the wine tastings where she held court and told stories about Owen's rising career, all of it thinned like fog under morning sun. By August, Owen had let his receptionist go. He couldn't justify the salary. He was answering his own phones in the co-working space, scheduling his own appointments, filing his own paperwork. His gross revenue had dropped to roughly $2,900 a month. After the co-working lease and basic operating expenses, he was clearing less than $1,100. Tiffany had started working part-time at a boutique on Abercorn Street. Their boys were pulled from the private tennis program they'd been enrolled in, $380 a month per child. That was the first thing to go. My parents began eating simpler meals. My father started clipping coupons from the Sunday paper. My mother stopped going to the salon every 2 weeks. The $1,200 monthly deposit they'd been counting on for a year and a half had vanished without explanation, and their fixed income didn't stretch far enough to cover the gap. They sold my father's fishing boat in September. He'd had it for 11 years. It went for $4,200, less than 1 month of Owen's real rent. I learned most of this secondhand, through Marcus, through Sarah, through the general current of a city where everyone knows someone who knows someone. I didn't call. I didn't check. I didn't drive past their house or look up Owen's business filings. I didn't need to. The information arrived the way weather does. Gradually, inevitably. I felt no satisfaction. That's the truth. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel vindication. I felt the quiet, steady pulse of a life that was finally running on its own terms. 1 year later, everything had changed. It was a Saturday afternoon in April. The restaurant garden behind the Hearth and Harvest was in full bloom. I had planted it 2 years ago, raised beds of herbs and edible flowers that the kitchen used for garnish and cocktails. Rosemary, lavender, nasturtium. Lily helped me water it every weekend. She had her own pair of gardening gloves, bright yellow, 2 sizes too big, and she wore them with the kind of seriousness that made the prep cooks smile when she walked past. She was standing between the basil and the cherry tomatoes, holding the hose at an angle, laughing because the water pressure had kicked up and sprayed her shoes. She was wearing a new dress, cornflower blue. She had picked it out herself. No one told her it was too nice for gardening. No one told her she looked like a charity case. She looked like spring. The Hearth and Harvest had its strongest quarter on record. Gross revenue was up 11%. The Savannah Food and Wine keynote had led to a consulting inquiry from a restaurant group in Charleston. Marcus had hired 2 new line cooks and a pastry chef I'd been trying to recruit for a year. The private dining room was booked through June. Lily had made honor roll for the 2nd consecutive semester. She joined the school art club and started a nature journal where she pressed flowers between the pages and labeled them in careful block letters. She had friends who came over on weekends, real friends. Girls who sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor and traded stickers and laughed so loud I could hear them from the kitchen. She laughed more now. Not the careful, measured laugh of a child who was trying not to take up too much space. A real laugh. Open. Unguarded. The kind that fills a house. We had dinner together every night. At the kitchen table, no white linen, no peonies. Just plates I'd made on a pottery wheel during a class we took together last fall, slightly uneven, glazed in blue and green, each one a little different. Lily had painted a small L on the bottom of hers. I had painted a K on mine. We used them every single night. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I pulled it out. The screen showed a blocked call notification. No name, no number, just the gray silhouette and the word blocked. I looked at it for a moment. The garden was warm. The hose was running. Lily was crouched next to the basil, carefully pinching off a leaf and holding it up to her nose. I declined the call without looking twice. I slid the phone back into my pocket. "Mom," Lily said, holding the basil leaf out to me. "Smell this one. It's the best one." I crouched down next to her. I took the leaf. I held it to my nose and breathed in. "You're right," I said. "That's the best one." She smiled. The gap where her front tooth had been was gone now. A new tooth had grown in, straight and white. She looked older, steadier, like someone who had stopped waiting to be told she was enough. That evening, after the hose was coiled and the garden gloves were drying on the porch rail, I sat in the office at the Hearth and Harvest and looked at the framed photograph on my desk. David holding Lily at the hospital, the same 5x7 she keeps on her nightstand. I thought about what he would say. I think he would have said I waited too long. And I think he would have been right. But I also think he would have understood why. Some doors close so better ones can open. I never regretted a single second of it. If you enjoyed this story about protecting your children and knowing your worth, hit that like button and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell for more stories just like this one. Thanks for watching.